The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. The Phoenix Suns defeated the New Orleans Pelicans 110-99. Sam, how you feeling?
Fuck yeah, man. 1 down, 15 to go. Let's go. NBA
That's the way
playoffs.
to look at it, right? That is the way to look at it, and I still struggle. I'm always like, just get through this one series first. It's hard for me to think about the other.
You can't
15.
do that, dude. We know what the goal is. We know what the goal is here.
That's true. One game at a time. But yeah, this one, I mean, all in all, the Suns led the entire game. But, you know, there were stretches where it got a little iffy, and Chris Paul essentially ended it. That's basically the story of the game, I'd say. What do you think?
Yeah, look, the story of the first half was the defense. But what people are going to remember about this game, say, like next year, 5 years, or however long from now, like if you go back and look at this game, this was a Chris Paul game. It was Chris Paul saving our asses in the early fourth quarter, as he has done so many times before. Once things, as you said, started to get a little bit scary there at the end of the third, and 30 points, 7 rebounds, 10 assists, 3 steals, 1 block, 12 of 16 shooting being the final line for Chris Paul, 4 for 6 from deep, plus 20. The next best was Jay Crowder at plus 11. Chris Paul was a plus 20. I'm preaching to the choir with Suns fans, but fuck, man, we got to appreciate this guy while he's still here, because he could still play. He'll be the first one to tell you that he could still play. Yeah. But there are definitely people in the NBA community who are not properly appreciating what he is capable of as a game manager. And in the fourth quarter tonight, he was perfect. It's just absolutely perfect.
Yep, I agree. I mean, literally, I think he ended up being 6 for 6 or 7 for 7 or something like that in the fourth quarter.
It's also the fact that, you know, like I went back and looked at a lot of guys' regular season stats and where the final stats ended up the other day before the playoffs started, just because I was curious. And I think it's so interesting, Mike, that all this season, Chris Paul, his 3-point percentage reverted this year down to, I think it was like 31.5%. Last year was up near 38, 39%. And it was at least around league average for the past few years. This year went down to 32%. We never talked about it throughout this season. You know, I like maybe you did at some point. I don't know if you can remember or not, but like
it never concerned me.
I can't remember bringing it up once on a regular season podcast, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. That there's a certain level of confidence that you have if you can trust anything in this world. You know, it's death taxes and Chris Paul in the fourth quarter. But specifically that it wasn't just the elbow jumper this time, and that he was able to abuse the mismatches, get the switches onto the guys he wanted, even if it was, say, Larry Nance Jr., you know, in that small ball lineup or whatever. That's the matchup he wanted. And to rise over the top of guys like that with the 3 specifically, yeah, they're never a worry, man. He's amazing. Just fucking amazing.
Yeah, it's really incredible. And we were talking about it in our end of season podcast that it's just easy to take it for granted, Chris Paul, because he's just kind of always good. Like, there's never really bad games to really highlight just how good he can be at times, right? It's not like, you know, like Cam Johnson having that 138-point game, and it stands out because you know what Cameron Johnson has done the rest of the season. It's just Chris Paul does something amazing week after week after week after week, and you just expect it. You just really expect it. But coming into the playoffs, you know, it's no surprise. I don't know that he scored 30 points the whole regular season. Like, I don't even remember what his season high was. But in this game, it came to him so easily. And I think, you know, being a home game, the way it started, right, the Suns just were so prepared on defense, and you could feel that. You know, Charles Barkley at halftime called it one of the best defensive performances in a half that he's seen in the NBA. And it's hard to argue that. Of course, you know, it is a 1 versus 8 seed, so it can get better against better teams. So that's really the thing that you have to hold on to. But I don't know, the way that it played out, at least to start, how did you feel about it after we talked through the starters versus the starters at the very least? Did it feel like what we talked about? Did anything stand out or surprise you?
Real quick, first of all, just to your point on Chris Paul a second ago, he did not score 30 points all season long. I just checked. His season high was 27.
There it
so
is.
literally, season high was 27, comes in on the first night of the playoffs.
I had a
drops
feeling.
30. Insane. Absolutely
I had a feeling.
insane.
And it's not even surprising with him.
Yeah, it's amazing. With the defense, I think we covered it pretty well, don't you? Like, we didn't get... What do you want to say? Go for it.
Herb on Chris Paul. We barely touched on that. That was kind of the big thing.
But we
right?
did. Hey, but we did touch on it. Remember?
True.
It was buried in the back half of the episode. For anyone who listened to the preview, it was buried in the back half of the episode. But I included it as one of my X factors. I said, "Hey, Mike, what do you think? What if Willie learns from the Bucks and throws this guy on Chris Paul to try and pressure him and speed them up? And what would happen to the Suns' offense then?" And you said, "Well, Sam, obviously they've spent all season learning from that. They'll just have Jay Crowder and Mikal Bridges take the ball up more often." And that's exactly what happened tonight. I mean, if I was an actual sicko, I'll probably assign David to do this if he's not already planning on doing it. I would have counted the actual number of possessions where Mikal Bridges and Jay Crowder brought the ball up the floor and tallied it as an actual proportion, an actual percentage, like compared to their regular season proportion or whatever. But it just felt like a lot. And bottom line is, no matter what the Pelicans did with their one great defender that they have in Herb Jones, they were never able to speed the Suns up, and they were never able to get the Suns out of their typical sets, try hard as they might.
I mean, the only time that they had a great stretch was when Chris Paul was off the floor, Mikal Bridges was off the floor, DeAndre Ayton was off the floor. And that's one of those things where, and part of that reason was that Cam Payne was 1 for 6 and just did not really look entirely like himself. We know he had a knee injury. He missed the last game of the season because of that. Not an injury, I should say, soreness, some issues with it. And that could be all it is. But the bench advantage needs to really go in the Suns' favor. Obviously, they don't need it to win. It just happened. I would say that the bench of the Pelicans was arguably better than the bench of the Suns in this last game outside of Cameron Johnson. So they did find ways to attack when they were on the floor. A normal game by Cameron Payne would have ended it early, but then we wouldn't have had the Chris Paul masterclass. But I did find it interesting with Herb on Chris Paul. They put Brandon Ingram on Devin Booker, and he really just kind of feasted on that matchup early. It's just, I think one of the things about Devin Booker that is often lost with people who talk about him is the work that he does off the ball. And he just does a ton of work. In fact, I would say every player does a ton of work outside of Chris Paul off the ball on the Suns. But Devin Booker running a guy around multiple screens before catching the ball and just making their lives miserable before he even catches it. And then everyone on the Suns being in an advantage situation on offense. It's really remarkable. And you put Herb on Chris Paul, that allows Devin Booker to really do a lot of those things because Herb is the best at navigating screens on the Pelicans. And I'm not sure what they're going to do beyond this, like after today, if they're going to keep that going or if they're going to try Herb on Devin Booker. I'm really interested to see what they try.
They can put Herb on Booker instead, like we initially anticipated that they would, but it doesn't really, it's a Band-Aid, I guess, but they still only have this one good defender. They can't plug up all the holes that the Suns have for them. One guy, and you were quick to point this out, and I was quick to point this out as well as I was scrolling my timeline through the game. I thought this could maybe be a Mikal Bridges game when I initially saw what the matchups were and that CJ McCollum was going to be on Mikal Bridges. I thought, okay, I could see this being a Mikal Bridges 20-point game. And then as it turned out, he was the guy. I mean, he took 9 shots, which for Mikal Bridges isn't bad, but he never really took off offensively like I expected. But you can easily anticipate a universe where he does, because CJ is not able to block his shot if he gets comfortable into that little 14 to 16 foot range. Ayton was obviously fantastic tonight. The point being, the Pelicans, they can shift the matchups around, but they just don't have multiple defensive stoppers. Ingram is long, but he's not a defensive stopper like they need him to be. So finding a sustainable strategy for them to plug up the Suns' offense, it's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean, I don't want to make it sound like the series isn't fucking over. It's not like, a victory parade. It's just, it's tough. If you're Willie Green right now.
That's what we should talk about. I mean, what kind of adjustments do you think they could make? Because I think the biggest thing is Hayes might be out of the rotation entirely now. I just don't really know how you can continue playing him, the Suns just forcing him to run around and look lost so often was tough. And the fact that he was not able to capitalize on any, significantly, I should say, on offensive rebounds throughout the game. In fact, the best offensive rebound stretch that they had was when Larry Nance was on the floor. It wasn't even Valanciunas. It wasn't even Jackson Hayes.
I mean, which stretch are you referring to? Third quarter?
Third
when
quarter.
They made the run? I mean, I want to give credit to Jonas. Like, 25 rebounds, 13 of them offensive, is really, really hard to do. Like, I think there were a bunch of stretches for Jonas in this particular game where it might lead, like, it happened to coincide with the Pelicans were hemorrhaging points anyway. Like, they couldn't score offensively and they were hemorrhaging points defensively. And it kind of makes people, like, point towards Jonas's offensive rebounding stat and being like, see, those rebounds are empty numbers. I don't think those were empty numbers for him. I think anytime you can get 25 rebounds, 13 of them offensively, again, that's valuable. And as we go along in the series, I'll say this right now, I don't think this is going to be a sweep. I based on the energy, the vibe I was getting from the Pelicans, the fight that they had in the third quarter right now, I do not think this is going to be a sweep. If they grab 25 offensive rebounds in another game and the Suns just, it's one of those nights where they can't hit a shot, then that math is going to be even. And yes, they are absolutely going to steal a game that way. But look, to your original point, Larry Nance was great too, especially in that third quarter. And he's probably going to absorb all of Jackson Hayes' minutes going forward at a certain point. Devontae Graham also was not inspiring. We talked at length about that in the preview. He only took 2 shots in 10 minutes, and the only reason he's out there is to heat up. If he can't heat up, you could cut him out of the rotation.
Yeah.
We could see the Pelicans go with a 7-man rotation for the rest of the series. I don't know.
This is why I think a sweep might still be on the table. For the record, the fact
it's on the table. It's on the table, but I just wouldn't expect it.
I think what's tough about the situation that they find themselves in currently is that, say they cut Jackson Hayes out of the rotation entirely, then they cut Devontae Graham out of the rotation entirely, then what? Larry Nance Jr. in the starting lineup? That could be the case. If Larry Nance Jr. is in the starting lineup, they have essentially no good bench players coming off the bench, maybe outside of Trey Murphy the third, who's obviously their best shooter and can do a lot, but outside of that is somebody the Suns could game plan to target if he starts getting significant amount of minutes, which he didn't really in this game, although he played 25 minutes. He played relatively well, but if he starts becoming a major piece for the team, which I think he might after this game, the Suns will be prepared for that.
He's just not a high usage piece no matter how many minutes he played, and this goes back to exactly the problem we were talking about in our preview as well. It's like you can cut down the rotation if you're the Pelicans, but CJ McCollum already played 43 minutes in this game. Brandon Ingram already played 39 minutes in this game. How much more can you really play them? Are you going to ride them for 46 minutes? Once it gets down to the elimination games, 47 minutes? Are they going to come out at all? Jonas Valanciunas played 31 minutes. This was a game where he didn't get into foul trouble. There could be games further along in the series where you're more successful at getting him into foul trouble, and if you can successfully manage that, then that's even better because that takes away yet another player for them who's like even slightly a self-creator on offense. So, no matter any way you slice it for the Pelicans, they're going to be giving large chunks of minutes to Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Larry Nance, Alvarado, like more than half of their rotation is always going to be guys who just aren't inspiring offensive talents, and that's a problem.
Yeah, it's interesting with Valanciunas. It appears that you can't really post him up on DeAndre Ayton right now. That's just not something that's going to happen, and Ayton did a good job of staying attached to him. Ayton was incredible.
What an inspiring performance.
And that means with Valanciunas, that means a lot of the work that he's going to do is on tips, and that's why he had 13 offensive rebounds, but ended up being 7 for 21 overall in the game. That was due to the fight of the Suns trying to put him in as difficult of a position as possible in order to get those tips, but he's tall and he's long and he's strong, so he's going to get his arms up there and get on those boards. I think for the Suns, what they need to do better going forward is if Hayes is off the floor, which I think that if it doesn't happen by game 2 to start, I think it will probably happen by game 3 to start. Then I think you have to put Valanciunas in more positions to attempt to move his feet on this team. And that means with Devin Booker using DeAndre Ayton as a screener and bringing Valanciunas up into the actions as much as possible. And then what you essentially have to do is whatever advantage he brings them, you have to attempt to turn him into a liability. Because if you turn him into a liability, then you could potentially neutralize the offensive rebounding advantage.
Exactly.
Now,
Yep.
it almost doesn't matter at this point, because I feel like no matter what, there's a really good chance that soon Larry Nance will be getting more minutes than Valanciunas at center, because he's just more built for the playoffs when it comes to defense. And it's tough for me to imagine that the offensive rebounding advantage that Valanciunas gives you is going to outweigh the ability to move your feet, which is what Larry Nance has against this Suns team. I think they would rather have a guy that's capable of defending guys on the move. But what do you think?
Dude, I haven't had time to do the stat research here, but like, when's even the last time a team grabbed 25 offensive rebounds in the playoffs and lost? Like, that's insane. 25-5. You're telling me that math isn't going to swing a game at some point?
Yeah,
you know, because
absolutely.
Here's the thing. I hear you. I totally hear you. And we talked about Valanciunas's foot mobility issues again in our preview, which is why I keep saying I think we called it pretty well going into this. There were a couple things we got wrong that we'll cover, but I think we called it pretty well. But 13 offensive rebounds, I mean, come on. Like, if he didn't shoot 7 for 21, and again, that's credit to DeAndre Ayton, but like a normal performance there is going 11 for 21, and that right there, that's an 8-point swing. If you do something like that with, roughly the same number of possessions, suddenly the Suns only win this game by theoretically 3 points instead of 11 or whatever they did. I think it's going to be more felt than it was in this game at a certain point. I don't think Valanciunas is going to be a defensive stopper at any point in this series, but I don't think he's getting played off the floor either.
Yeah. Well, what I think is going to be interesting going forward as well is how does CJ try to figure out that matchup against Mikal Bridges, because the only time CJ really got going is a stretch in the third where other guys were guarding him, and more specifically a stretch where he did get Chris Paul on a few possessions back to back to back and scored a few buckets. But Mikal was absolutely incredible in this game. Just everywhere on defense, fighting through screens, getting all over the place in the passing lanes, closing out strong, not letting basically every single thing the Pelicans attempted to do, it was dirty, right? Nothing was clean. Everything was bumped a little bit. Everything was fighting through something else. Nothing was clean. And I think that's something that is legitimately sustainable for Mikal Bridges. I think that's the main thing about who he is that he can do that game after game after game. And I'm really interested, because there was a stretch, I think, in this game where Devin Booker was guarding CJ. And I think we saw right away why that was not going to work. It's CJ can get his shot off against Devin Booker because Booker does not have the length to contest on his step backs. And that means CJ could just take a step back, and he's unbothered by Booker in the way that he's really bothered by Mikal Bridges. So I think they're going to keep that, something that we talked about before. I think they're going to keep that going. And I'm just interested to see what they try to do on the Pelicans' end to fight through that, because it's hard to picture.
That's the thing I mentioned earlier that at least I'll say I was wrong about. I anticipated, and I also posted a poll to Twitter, and 60% of the people on the poll said they would put Mikal Bridges on Brandon Ingram to start. So those people were wrong, and I was wrong about what Monty actually decided to do. Yeah. And look, just based on the results here, I think, well played, Monty. No surprise there. With Book, it's the combination of CJ being able to take the step back and shoot over him, and also just when he goes around screens, he can get that extra level of separation just a half step or a half second quicker, which, we've talked about in the past. But I do want to give credit not just to Mikal Bridges, but really just the Suns' wing rotation down the line, and that includes Booker. But it also includes Jay Crowder. It also includes Cam Johnson and Torrey Craig. At just a fantastic performance all around in terms of their help defense. A lot of it was based on the fact of they understood. They just know their personnel so well. That's, I guess, what kind of keeps surprising me about this team. They know their personnel. That's always step one. And with the Pelicans, the shot profile here, they only attempted 23 threes.
Yeah.
Out of a total of 9.
They've attempted less as the season has gone along. So it is less than they normally attempt, but they do like to shoot mid-range.
They only attempted 23 threes out of a total of 95 shots. that's a very low percentage for a modern. It's not really a modern team at all if you just look at that shot profile in terms of what it is. The Suns already don't take a ton of threes. The Suns tonight took 28 threes out of 78 shots. That's not a ton either. But, it's more than 23 out of 95. That's a really, really low proportion.
95 shots is absurd, by the way.
And there's an obvious lack of respect. 95 shots is crazy. But there's an obvious lack of respect. Jackson Hayes, the 11 minutes that he played on the floor, there were possessions where they tried to put him in the corner, and Devin Booker was not having it. He completely pre-rotated all the way the hell out of the way so that he could be up as an extra help defender, ready in position to guard against the CJ McCollum led pick and roll action, whatever it was, paying no attention to Jackson Hayes in the corner whatsoever. Herb Jones made 1 3 tonight, but he only attempted 2. They're not concerned about him. Najee Marshall can't shoot. He didn't even attempt a 3 tonight. There's, like I said in the preview again, there aren't shooters on this team, so that allows every help defender on the Suns, be it Jay Crowder, be it Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, go all the way down the line to just take liberties with erasing the space, getting into the space and taking it away from CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram when they come around those pick and rolls in the first place. And they did a fantastic job with that tonight, just in general. The other thing is, if there's an action leading a Pelicans player up to the top of the key, like an off-ball action, then whoever that help defender is for the Suns feels so much more comfortable jumping to the ball. So, like, if they create the initial... let's say Devin Booker is the one who's getting screened and it's an off-ball action, and I'm just throwing random players out now, but let's say CJ is coming to the top of the key and they create that initial separation. There's going to be a guy on the wing, and his responsibility becomes you have to jump into the ball. It's a little bit more than a stunt where you're just really like stunting and you don't actually have that intention of going out and defending it, but it's less aggressive than an actual full-on commit to a switch. But it's still your responsibility. You have to jump out there and then recover back to your man. And when you're not worried about the talent level of these shot makers, these shooters in the first place, you have so much more confidence in your ability as an overall scheme, as an overall system to accomplish stuff like that. And they just didn't allow the Pelicans to create any penetration on plays like that, because the next man over who had to make the rotation was always there. They were always in the right place. And it was a well-oiled machine at the end of the day.
There was one play where Jose Alvarado was on the left wing and Devin Booker was on the right side of the paint. So completely on the other side, just ignoring him completely, knowing that if they swing it to him, they're not confident in that shot, which, by the way, they didn't, because they're not confident in it. They're just not even passing it to those guys in those scenarios because they're trying to find better shots, and the defense is collapsing in on those shots. Couple things. I want to talk about the wings. Jay Crowder, by the way, his stat line, 1 point, 1 assist, 1 rebound. Second in plus minus on the team.
Guaranteed for 20 points next game. That's how it works with him usually. Jay always averages like 10 or 11 points, and the way he gets there is one game of 1, then another game of 20, and something like that. So,
Mikal Bridges, 0 for 3 from 3. Jay Crowder, 0 for 4 from 3. Torrey Craig, 0 for 1 from 3. Cam Johnson, 1 for 2 from 3. Cameron Payne, 0 for 3 from 3. Outside of Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, who hit a 3 in this game, and Chris Paul, the rest of those guys were 1 for 13 from the 3-point line in this game.
Hence the reason it got scary at a certain point.
Well, I think if you're looking at this from a Pelicans perspective or even a Suns perspective, say Valanciunas does a little better. Say CJ does better. Ingram can do better. All three of those guys can play better offensively. But the Suns missed a lot of open shots in this game as well. For
sure. Especially in that third quarter when they caught up. The Suns were not thwarted in their ability to get open shots. They would run stack. Cam Johnson gets an open shot, misses. Next play, come down, run a flare screen for Mikal Bridges, gets an open 3 in the corner, misses. It was just like that for a stretch of the game where it was like they were getting clean looks, but the Pelicans were still able to catch up with a combination of the offensive rebounding and a little bit of bad shooting luck from the Suns on the other end.
Yeah, and by catch up, I think they cut it to within 6. The Suns ended up winning by like 11 or something like that. When that Chris Paul run, it was like 18.
6 is a game, though. You were sweating. You didn't think they would lose, but you were sweating a little bit. at the
I
beginning
think
of
I was
fourth
literally sweating.
Yeah, don't
that
lie to
point
me.
of the
That's
game.
what I'm saying. Don't lie to me.
100%. No.
Because I know everyone should have faith in Chris Paul at this point. Everyone should have faith this team's 48-0, like leading into the fourth quarter. I get it. But when that lead was cut down to 6, don't tell me for a second that you weren't sweating a little bit. You were thinking you were thinking about how much would it suck to blow this lead after such an amazing first half.
There was a point in the regular season where we came on the podcast, and it was in like the doldrums of the regular season before the Chris Paul injury. And I remember telling you, I feel like it's Groundhog Day. I feel like every single time we watch the Suns, it's the same. They go on a run. They go way ahead. A team cuts it close, and then they destroy them in the fourth quarter. And that's exactly what happened in this game. And it is sort of a microcosm of the regular season. They did that over and over and over and over again in the regular season. And that's why, as players, they could be confident going into that fourth quarter, understanding that they have an advantage in that whatever scenario that they were in at that point, they had been in over and over and over again. For whatever reason, when they do have big leads on teams, they often let teams back into it a little bit and then slam the door shut in the fourth quarter. So yes, while I was sweating, I did have the regular season sort of playing in the back of my mind, understanding that I've seen this one before. And, for the Pelicans, it's going to be tough in game 2. Obviously, another game at home. Game 2, I believe, is Tuesday? I don't have the schedule up. So Tuesday. Not a lot of time for them. They played a lot recently in the play-in for 2 games, and then, of course, this game. And then they're probably going to shorten their rotation again in that game 2. And it's going to be interesting. Is there anything else as far as adjustments that you could think of on either end of that? Whether it be the Suns or the Pelicans?
No. Can I give you an opportunity to do a hot take?
Sure.
To give your hot take, because I want to hear it.
Okay.
We have to get better at marketing this pod in some ways, dude. Because we jump into the we jump into like the nitty gritty X's and O's too quick
Immediately. Yeah.
and we don't even consider to think of the stuff that would actually get the most plays. Let's talk about the Herb Jones hit on DeAndre Ayton, because I think that's what everyone is talking about ironically on Twitter right now. I'm enjoying the win. Here's what I'll say about it. I'm just thankful because it looked bad and it looked like it could have been much worse.
Right. Yeah, I was afraid like his jaw was like dislocated or something.
Yeah.
Or
my first two thoughts was, oh, he's holding his jaw. Is his jaw dislocated? And then the other one, oh, he's kind of looks dizzy. Like, is his brain soup now? Like, what happened? Because until we saw the replay, we didn't know exactly where he got hit. Do you have a take on Herb Jones? You said he's on the list.
Let me say 2 things. One, I like Herb Jones. I actually like him a lot. I think he's a really great player.
I'm laughing because the first tweet I saw from you as soon as the play happened, or the first tweet I saw from anyone, I just checked my timeline. Attempted murder is what you said.
For the record, the attempted murder tweet was about Mikal Bridges on Jonas Valanciunas.
Oh,
when he just absolutely tried.
Because it was like 30 seconds later. It was like 30 seconds later, and my
really funny.
My entire feed was like, "Oh, did you see that hit from Herb on Ayton?" And then I just see Mike V. Hill attempted murder. I was like, "Oh, I don't know about that." But
if people think that that's about Herb, that's actually really funny, and I will not correct them because I'm okay with them assuming irrationality. But let me say, the other tweet I had about that was Herb's on the list because he jumped into that. Now, let me explain the list here. When you're on the list, it's not a judgment of your intention. I don't put people on the list because I'm 100% certain they did whatever they did on purpose.
Although sometimes they do, but just not always.
Sometimes they do.
Terrence Mann is on the list.
Terrence Mann's on the list.
For Smalling, Ife Lundberg, he's absolutely on the list.
Absolutely. It's irrational. It's about the ability to add stakes to a game to make it feel more fun. I don't hate Herb Jones. He's on the list. That means that it has more stakes. It's not rational. It's actually, in most ways, it's meant to be completely irrational. So I saw some Pelicans fans already getting mad about that. And look, the reality is it makes the game more fun for me, and that's almost
100%.
enough by itself. That's all I really need. I don't judge his intention. I'm not saying he did it on purpose or by accident. I am saying he jumped into him because he did. That's exactly what happened. All you have to do is watch it to see that he jumped into him. But he's on the list. Dorian Finney-Smith is on the list. James Johnson is on the list.
Oh, he's absolutely on the list. Yep.
Campazzo is on the list.
Oh my God, Campazzo's on the list. Yep.
Patrick Beverley headlines. It might as well be called the Patrick Beverley list because Patrick Beverley headlines the list for one, tripping Chris Paul, making him fall on his wrist, which is likely where he hurt his wrist for the finals, pushing Chris Paul at the end of the series, breaking Devin Booker's nose. A lot of these reasons are why it's a great thing that the Suns are not playing the Timberwolves in the first round, because who knows what Patrick Beverley would try to pull on the team that eliminated him last year. But yes, the list is not a judgment of intention for any of those who are getting mad. I think there actually is a good chance that some Pelicans fans may listen to this podcast. I think we had a few already for our last one. But for the record, I still like Herb Jones, and I don't necessarily think he did it on purpose, but it's not in any way a judgment of whether or not he did or didn't.
Yeah, it's a shame. Schmidt gave us that shout out, that vouch from from Pelicans Twitter. So I already gained a bunch of Pelicans followers over the past 24 hours. I'm trying not to piss them off as soon as possible. But if you're a Pelicans fan listening to this, it's like, look, your boy's good. I like him. He's got a good case for an all defensive team. But now he has to get cooked now. I'm sorry. That's just how it is. He's on the list.
And if he does get cooked in any way, we're going to blow it up and exaggerate it as much as possible because he's on the list. And that's how it works. That's just how it works. And I trust me, if you embrace it, it's a lot more fun than if you fight it. In fact, make your own list. I'm sure Chris Paul and Jay Crowder will be on it by the end of the series. 100%. I can almost guarantee it based on all the other series that we've seen so far. Any concern with Campaign before we go 1 for 6? Didn't play very well in this game.
I've seen Campaign have games like this before, if we're being honest. There's always slight underlying concern with Campaign, you know what I mean? But like, what if the finishing is just never what it once was when it was at its peak? But I'm not there yet. I've seen him have bad games before.
Any predictions on the next game, whether it be schematically or even if you want to predict the score at the end or who's going to win, feel free to do that as well.
Willie, I'm trying to decide what end of the spectrum I think exactly he's at with. Do you think he'd pull the plug on Hayes by game 2? You think he really would?
I think I'd be surprised if Larry Nance. I'd be surprised if Larry Nance Jr. played less than 28 minutes. He played 19 in this game. Hayes played 11.
Yeah, Hayes played 11. Man, that's really bad. I mean, I think Hayes is going to start though. I think he is for game 2.
I don't know. He might not. I think there's a chance he might not. But I get why you're saying that because. If he's like Monty, which Monty likes to stick with things for at least a little bit longer than some other coaches just to see what works, so that there is a chance there. So that is an interesting one. I think what I could see is Ingram having a big game in this one. It is still Jay Crowder chasing him around. Jay Crowder, I think, did an excellent job. As a team, I think the Suns did an excellent job. More than anything, I think they will continue to try and force these guys to be playmakers and pass to shooters who don't want to shoot. And I think that's a great game plan against this team. And I'd be surprised if they change anything going forward for the Suns. Beyond, just make your shots, guys, who are catching it when you're open. Mikal Bridges, maybe Cameron Johnson gets a little more minutes because he was hitting. But beyond that, I think that's the main thing for the Suns. They can play a little bit better offensively, but can stick with the majority of the defensive game plan, I'd say.
Only other thing I'll say, because if you're the Suns, you're in the driver's seat right now. And schematically, I don't really think anything's going to change. If you want to neutralize that advantage that the Pelicans have a little bit, I mentioned before the fact that Valanciunas only had 2 fouls in 31 minutes. If you're DeAndre Ayton, you could be a little bit more inventive. You could be a little bit more vocal when you're trying to box him out for those defensive boards, and he gives you a little shove in the back, which he was doing all night, and he just gets away with it. You could sell it. You could squawk a little bit, and I think that's one of those veteran tricks that Ayton in year 4 or whatever he's in, year 4, still hasn't, he's grown so much as a defensive communicator, but he still hasn't learned the veteran bag of tricks, and that's where he could get a little bit better. Get Valanciunas with a couple of early over-the-back fouls, and it's a different game.
Yeah, that's a really great point, and I think even Devin Booker and Chris Paul could put a little pressure on him to get some fouls from him as well. But yeah, that's all I got. Do you have anything else before we go?
No, just a really, really enjoyable way to kick off the postseason here. I thought it was a ton of fun.
Yeah. We'll be back after every game, so continue listening.
See you
we'll
in
be here
48
every
hours.
Game. Yeah, we haven't quite figured out what we're going to do about Patreon during the playoffs. We're going to have a conversation about what the plan is there. But at the very least, we'll be doing Game 3 on Playback on Friday, so feel free to join us. Is it Friday?
It's
that
Friday.
sounds right. Okay, Friday. So feel free to join us for that one because I think that'll be really fun. That's Patreon only, but we appreciate you guys. Go Suns, and we'll be back very soon.